Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wavy Tunnel Market Outlook for the week beginning August the 17th. How time flies. Before we start, the presentation is for educational purposes only. Please read through the remaining disclaimer contents and make sure that you understand and everything is as it should be. So, what have we got in store for ourselves this week? We'll start with this, and just for headline purposes, and so my eyes will be drawn to these. Crude extends gains, economic cooling, wheat soars, yields, sentiment. So I'd look at those headlines, and I would think that the markets would be behaving in, in a certain way, and which is not the case. And even the economic data that's coming out is not supporting what these headlines are saying. So you can draw your own conclusions from what's been reported and what's happening in the stock markets. And as we lead into November, I won't get drawn into that conversation, but you just draw your own conclusions. But suffice to say, this market's probably not going down, and data that's going to come out is going to support that thesis. And then after midterms, depending on the outcomes, we will see what will happen to these markets. There's nothing earth-shattering this week in the form of economic data, and I don't think it actually matters unless things are spectacularly out of sync, because I think the market is on a mission to, just go higher. So let's go and have a look at the charts and see what the charts are saying. So let's go into the euro and let's go and have a look at this. So we can see that the dollar spent the week on the back foot. Equities were going higher. Dollar was weakening, and European currencies and anything against the dollar was strengthening. Look at this pattern that we've got here. We identified these patterns last week when you've got this, what some people will call a cup and saucer kind of pattern, and where the market is potentially going to go. We can see on here, first impulse up. There's our target up above 116. We are running out of momentum. You can see that. You can see that the oscillators are also stretched and are waiting for something. So depending on what your thesis is, I think these markets probably just drift more sideways. Measure this move for, which will take you just above, well, take you to target or just above, or do we get a deeper correction, pull back into, the wave in the tunnel, and set ourselves up for a last leg higher on this particular pattern. Going to the hourly, you can see that the markets, they have these impulsive moves. They then have these long corrective waves. Difficult to try and find setups. Even if you're going through the time frames, you've just got to be patient. You've got to be very, very patient. This looks flaggy in nature, but then look and see what can happen to a flag. That would have looked flaggy in nature, but it just was grinding its way up. So the same thing happens here. What I would be doing here is I would be measuring that, looking for a move back into, hello, what was that? That was that pattern that we saw there. The breakout, previous area of resistance now becomes support, and so there becomes your area of support here. So if we break lower, this might be a 1, 2, 3 correction down into the tunnel, fill the gap trade, possibly extend a little bit more. We can make this chart very messy by looking at, I'm going to go to the low here and see where this takes us to. So we're hovering around 25, 50% gives us the tunnel, higher time frame gives us our zone that we really enjoy. So just mark these levels off and look for potential. So you could get a 1, 2, 3 correction down into this area here and then continue higher. Again, it will depend on news feeds, narratives, news items that are coming out, and it's all about the Middle East. Let's be under no illusions what it's all about. So that's what I'd be looking for in the euro. Um, Sterling, similar paths, but probably a little bit stronger. Trying to understand why. I'm in the UK at the moment, and to say it's a mess is an understatement. So this is obviously just playing the dollar gain, but I would think that this area up here should prove to be quite resistant. So anything up here, you can see divergence, you can see the similar tact of the bungees with looking for direction, and I would probably favor a pullback into the wave and the tunnel. Then we could go sideways again. Again, we would be influenced by the news. Slightly lower time frames, see if anything's setting up similar patterns here, flaggy, but you can see again where we could just sort of drift higher. I don't, you also remember it's Northern Hemisphere school holidays. People will start drifting back to schools and coming back to work after summer breaks. So liquidity's been thin, so that might start picking up soon and might liven the markets up. Let's go and have a look at our friend here to see how our intervention policies are going, and you can see the impact of the intervention, and we currently retracing, and this is a pattern that just keeps repeating itself. If we look at the daily, you can see the impulse is down, the grind's higher, the impulse is down, the grind's higher, impulse is down, grind's higher. I'll show you what you can do on TradingView. I can't do it on this one. I'll have a look at these and I'll show you how I extrapolate these and make them look a little bit more interesting from looking for targets in the markets. So we are in those summer months. We are in illiquid markets. We are looking for headlines. We're looking for positive, negative news to be a catalyst for the next primary move. We know what the overlying trends are. We know what is influencing the markets. So pick your trades carefully, and let's just be careful out there. So and let's go into, again, I'm not going to use Ninja because TradingView I can do a few more things because I can see the options. I can see everything in a screenshot. The wavy tunnel setup is there. The option levels are there. We drew these last week, and I've now drawn support and resistance lines, so I will take those out, and you can see how they have been like magnets. These are the levels that we'll be looking for. So you can see the stretch target, and that comes into that top side move that we identified with that breakout pattern here. When they break out and they stretch, you can see the impulsive move. You've got to leave yourself just entry orders on these, sometimes difficult to get in. Let's have a look at slightly broader to see what is. You can still see that we've got targets up here towards 31, and these previous highs, and the markets just grinding its way up to these levels. I can see it's difficult at the moment to try and work out what's because the markets are not behaving in a manner that would be reflective of a lot of the underlying fundamentals. To me, there's just a lot of support for this market. Once it starts going down, this is when you get the, I'm not going to call it verbal intervention, but you're going to get comments that are made that will support putting a bottom on the market. So you can see the path of least resistance is higher. And so I don't think that's going to change in the short term. Here we can see a bit of a flag developing. So they all got the same patterns, indices, currencies. We'll have to see how we open um, on Monday morning and see where we're going. If I was to draw there, I can see down here. Now you can see where all your option levels are, and you can see your first your high volume level, which is basically where the tunnel is sitting for 0 DTE. You've got the GEX levels, which are then supporting the high. So more of the same, possibly pull back into this range here. Whoops, not that one. Here. Which is the target for this impulse here. It's also then got your option levels here, and it's also the breakout level for this move higher. So that's a number that you need to be watching, and that could if we don't break back above the highs of 3284, we could have this measured move where you go down exactly, and that goes very, very carefully into this level here. Previous support, breakout levels, high level of volume, and a measured move. Measured move is 100% of that first impulse there. So those are the levels that I would be watching on the Nasdaq. S&P, very similar. S&P has been quite reluctant to go down. It's trying to sort of grind its way higher. So you can see similar patterns, similar areas. This is all mapped out here for you. You can see your, let me just pull that up there. So, you know, we keep tinkering with all-time highs. You start getting too close. There's a number obviously now which is probably in the market's mind, which is 8,000. So that might be a target. This is just the daily chart, and you can see how this is reluctant to go down. This just wants to go higher, and I think it's continuous divergence. It's going to be very, very difficult. I think the market, like I said, I think we stay in this stronger bias until after the midterms, because they are not going to want this to go lower. And you can see on with all the option levels up here, so it's just going to be a grind. Everything's going to be a grind. So just use your wavy tunnel indicators and find areas of interest, but be patient. You can see loads of sideways movement, lots of small ranges. This is an hourly chart, and you can see it just spends time. So patience is the order of the day. Gold, I'm going to go jump to gold quickly because that behaved very, very nicely with all the projections that we had, and when it broke these levels, and just a good example of how it works. And so I'll take all those out now because they're, and we've got our areas again, and you can see where the market has come to, also flag. So now here you've got two things that could potentially happen, because you've got you've got here, so he says 1, 2, 3 back into 1-day max and possibly call resistance higher before coming lower. So and then that will become a bigger correction, and then we could come back down into these 43.90, 43 and a half area. All these areas are still valid, so we will just expand those boxes there. Gold is starting to get its vigor back and to find its momentum again, going into a higher time frame, and that's where you see the bigger moves and again a reluctance to go lower. So 4.5 remains the target. So 43.50 to 45 seems to be the range. Pick your poison, some wider gaps. So we might oscillate around here while we consolidate this move up, and then for a final move higher. Oil. So I think the oil markets now, they need the Strait to open. You can see it's ever decreasing circles. It's starting to trade within the option levels. The liquidity seems to be there. The market is not really going to break lower until we get a resolution. So I would think more of the same type of price action. I wanted to show you that yen, the pattern that we see, and the drawing tools that you can sometimes use. So when you find these, where is it? Bars pattern. So what you do is you see when you get these moves here, so this move here to there, it's just an example. So that plots the move, and then because you can see that these are the types of moves we get after intervention. And then what you do is you put that down here to see how that would then compare with this period of intervention, and you can see similar types of structural patterns, grind, and you just look at the parallel there. So what's going to happen? We probably start doing a little bit of that, and then that also then brings you into how you would look for your areas of previous support and resistance. And our box, we want to draw the box, and what is it? It's here, this one here, and there it is, sort of coincides. So that's your area, and what does that coincide with? 160 again. So this becomes your pivot point. A good tool to use in markets where you find yourself range bound and you find yourself with similar patterns that keep repeating. So you're just looking for how market plays out. You can see here to there, you just pull that in there, and you can see that they behave in a similar way, and they behave in a similar way. And so you look and identify, and it's just an additional tool to complement with what you're doing with wavy tunnel, what you're looking for, where you are in conjunction with your particular breakout trades, whether you've got, fill the gaps, you've got option levels, then you can got similar patterns, because the market repeats itself. And so you use all the tools that are available to you to try and design a way of plotting your way forward. So I hope this has been helpful. I know it's very, very bitty. The markets are trending up. The markets are reluctant to come down. Again, as we've said, I think there's a lot of support there for these markets to keep going higher, and the political rhetoric is going to keep it ramped up. They will not let this market come down, not yet. So have a good week, have a profitable week, stay safe, and I will see you next week. Take care.